Good morning. So, welcome to the first lecture. So, this is our week 1, lecture 1, English literature for competitive purposes, a very exciting course for those who want to appear for national as well as international exams that test your knowledge of literature. We will be doing a number of things in this course, as I have already told you in the introduction of this course, in the introductory video of this course. There will be a lot of focus on literature and how literature or literature based questions can be asked for national and international exams that test your power of literature, okay, the way you have interpreted or understood literature. So, of course, the way I am going to do the course, I will give you a lot of information where you can appear, where you can even attempt the essay type questions that may appear for your competitive exams, and there will also be lot of rigor and intensive training on the multiple choice kinds of questions also. So, this is what we are going to do, and literature, as I have already told you, we are not just restricting ourselves to literature in the English language, that is English literature, the traditional British literature. We are also going to do American, Asian writings, some Indian writing as well, American of course, and also world literature. So, you can expect people like some information on people like perhaps the European masters, the existentialists, and even earlier like Cervantes and Boccaccio and Dante. So, there would be information about all those movements, genres, people, personalities and all those, but remember the focus is not on any one particular trend or one particular nation or one particular nationality or one or period. It is, I am trying to, or I am attempting here to give you an overview of the kinds of material or information that is sought for or that could be used for those who want to appear for competitive exams testing literature. Now, this is not an exhaustive course, let me tell you at the beginning itself. This is not, I am not guaranteeing that by taking this course you are going to ace any exam, but yes, this is this could be a very good course for those who attempt to take competitive exams testing your English literature or literature in English rather, and it could be an important add-on, it could be an important reference for those who want to appear for such kinds of exams. I am going to do a lot of multiple choice questions also with you, but as always let me tell you that there is no guarantee that this is what that is going to be asked, but I can always tell you this is the pattern that is asked for very credible kinds of exams that test your knowledge of English literature or literature in English rather. So, yeah, let us start with this particular question. I am going to just give you some warm up exercises. So, look at the exercise here, look at the question here, look at the slide, and I will also tell you the question. First let us read this passage. Listen, we of the spear Danes in the days of yore, of those clan kings heard of their glory, how those nobles perform courageous deeds, of sight Seth's son from enemy hosts, from many peoples seas meet benches and terrorize the fearsome. Heruli after first he was found helpless and destitute. He then knew recompensate for that, he waved under the clouds, throve in honors until to him each of the bordering tribes beyond the Vale road had to submit and yield tribute that was a good king. This is a question. Where are these lines from? These are the kinds of questions you should and you can expect when you appear for literature based competitive exams, national and international. Please understand, I am not mentioning the names of any particular exams. Okay, I am just giving you a good understanding of what to expect when you go in or when you sign up for those kinds of exams. So, where are these lines from? The Pilgrim's Progress, Beowulf, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Troilus and Cressida. Next question. The following lines is an example of sodded in flames, it came gliding and flexing and racing towards its fate. This is an example of which literary device? Of pun and jambed couplet, iambic pentameter, caesura. Next question, next slide, please look at it. Identify who is the speaker. Literature from the antiquity. Now, since I am not going back to the beloved land of my fathers, since I was no light of safety to Patroclus, nor to any other companions, who in their numbers went down before glorious Hector, but sit here beside my ships, a useless weight on the good land. Why I wish that strife would vanish away from among gods and mortals, and gall which makes a man grow angry for all his great mind, that gall of anger that swarms like smoke inside of a man's heart and becomes a thing sweeter to him by far than the dripping of honey. Who is the speaker? Ulysses, Agamemnon, Achilles, Apollo. Next. Passage from Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales, and I want you to tell me the story, the section or the part of the Canterbury Tales where the following passage appears. "Oh, good sir, no more of this," said the knight. "What you have told is enough, in truth, and much more, for a little sorrow goes a long way with most people, I believe. As for me, it is a great distress to hear of the sudden fall of people who have been in great wealth and ease. Alas, and the contrary is joy and delight, as when a man who has been in a low station climbs up and becomes prosperous and remains there. Such a thing is joyful and pleasant to speak of." So, choose the correct response. Is it from the nun's priest's tale, the reeve's tale, the friar's tale, or the miller's tale? Next question. Name the work. Was every day of my life to be as busy a day as this? I will not finish the sentence till I have made an observation upon the strange state of affairs between the reader and myself. I am this month 1 whole year older than I was this 12th, and having got, as you perceive, almost into the middle of my 4th volume, and no farther than to my first day's life, it is demonstrative that I have 364 days more life to write just now than when I first set out, so that instead of advancing as a common writer in my work with what I have been doing at it, on the contrary, I am just thrown so many volumes back. Was every day of my life to be as busy a day as this, and why not? And the transactions and opinions of it to take up as much description, and for what reason should they be cut short? As at this rate I should just live 364 times faster than I should write, it must follow, and please your worships, that the more I write, the more I shall have to write, and consequently the more your worships reads, the more your worships will have to read. This is from, choose the correct response. This is from Absalom and Achitophel, Tristram Shandy, The Canterbury Tales, Ulysses. Next. Now name the text here. Now as Christian was walking solitary by himself, he espied one afar off come crossing over the field to meet him, and their hap was to meet just as they were crossing the way of each other. The gentleman's name was Mr. Worldly Wiseman. He dwelt in the town of Carmel Policy, a very great town, and also hard by from whence Christian came. So choose the correct response. Where is this from? The Pilgrim's Progress, Beowulf, Odyssey, Vanity Fair. The first question, the passage was from Beowulf. So answer B. Second is caesura. Caesura it provides a rhythm. So answer is D. Caesura, they typically consist of a pause in the middle of a line. So it could also be a comma, as you have already seen in that line, with an equal number of syllables on, or syllables, sorry, not syllables, syllables on both sides of the pause. The third one is from Iliad, Homer's Iliad. C. Achilles. Achilles is the speaker, and the Canterbury Tales is from the Nun's Priest's Tale. Fifth one is Tristram Shandy. B. It has taken him 1 year to narrate one day in his life. So he is digressing, and this is and he is contemplating the lag between narration and life. So it's a very mischievous kind of a writing. Tristram Shandy. You can expect all these kinds of writings for your competitive exams, especially the international variety. So we have talked about Beowulf, Canterbury Tales, Pilgrim's Progress, Tristram Shandy, Iliad, this and some literary devices. So this is what you can generally expect. So those of you who are really preparing seriously to crack some of these exams, you should know this is the nature, this is the tenor of questions that you are going to find. Sixth one is the Christian and Mr. Worldly Wise and all. It's a dead giveaway. It's A. Pilgrim's Progress. So that was the warm up. That's what I wanted to tell you, that this is what the course is going to be all about. We are going to do plenty of exercises, but it comes with a statutory warning. These exercises, I am not guaranteeing that this is what you are going to get, but what I can tell you is that how to go about and how to get start preparing for if this is what you want to do seriously. So today's class I am going to focus on Chaucer and the Canterbury Tales, Beowulf written by an unknown anonymous writer, and what is allegory. So generally this is how I am going to structure my lectures. I am going to give you plenty of exercises so that you can start thinking of how to prepare for your exams. At the same time, I am also going to give you an overview of important personalities, writers, poets, etc., playwrights of course, important literary movements and genres, important literary periods, little bit of literary theory criticism, important works, okay, so works of literature from across the world, but that's not going to be exhaustive. A course like this can never be exhaustive. We are not looking at a period, we are not looking at a particular nation. So it is not going to be exhaustive at all. I am just going to talk about what I feel are the major works. One of the earliest important works in the English language is Beowulf. It's an old English epic, so you should know what is an epic. It was composed around 725 AD. It's one of the earliest poem in a modern European language. Remember that. So English is a modern European language. But if you look at the way the original Beowulf was written, you will hardly be able to associate with the kind of English you know. So the way English has developed over the years, over the past few centuries, you should be attentive to that. It's also the most celebrated survival from old English literature. So you should know that also. Author is unknown, anonymous, and the manuscript, which dates from the late 10th century, was not really studied until the 18th century. From 18th century onwards, interest in Beowulf started increasing. It's a very important work, many of us may not be familiar with it, but people who do serious study of the English language and literature, they are expected to be familiar with Beowulf. You should know that it has individual episodes, echoes of old legends. They may have been derived from the oral tradition. In spite of all this, Beowulf, as we find today, is an artistically finished and unified work. It runs into 3,182 lines. It is unrhymed alliterative verse which was common to the early Germanic peoples. If you know your history of the English language, you should know that that English traces its roots to several European languages, several other European languages. In Beowulf, each line is divided into halves by a caesural pause. So that's why that line that I just showed you was from Beowulf. And the half lines, each with 2 accented and a varying number of unaccented syllables, are linked by alliteration. So alliteration is an important aspect of Beowulf. Grim and greedy, the gruesome monster. So the repetition of the syllable go. Look at this slide, please. And here I want you to look at the opening lines of a reading of Beowulf. Here is a video. Now, Beowulf is also known for the cannings, that is the compound nouns. Some of the very recognizable compound nouns are whale path for sea, ring bestower for king, battle flesh for sword, treasure holder for dragon. So it's called the cannings, or compound nouns. They are drawn from nature, customs, beliefs, and Beowulf has a very distinctive and picturesque stylistic effect by using two-term metaphors instead of similes. Remember this. So cannings, that is compound nouns. So if you come across this passage from Beowulf, you may not really know the entire Beowulf, although it runs into just 3,182 lines, which is not too much, but you should go through it. Just give it a cursory look, the style of Beowulf. You should also know the stylistic aspects of the poem, because many a time this is one question that can be asked, that what is the style of this passage. Okay, so you should be able to identify Beowulf by the historical elements, natural scenes, and the description of the deeds of the folk hero. Again, all these things are parallel in the literature of the Germanic continental tradition and of pagan Scandinavia. So that those are the roots of Beowulf. Coming to the hero, now this is an adventurous hero, one of the foremost important national heroes. He is identified as a Geat, G-E-A-T, probably from southern Sweden, and there are also references to an actual raid down the Rhine, the river, in AD 521 by the king of the Geats, that is Beowulf's uncle Hyglac, H-Y-G-L-A-C. So Beowulf identified as a Geat. His uncle, Beowulf's uncle Hyglac. England is never mentioned, yet the poem was written in England, where the original pagan and continental elements of history and folklore were modified by the poet's ideas and his Christian view of society. There is a scene in Hrothgar court. It is not the crude barbaric civilization of the Baltic, but the cultivated, refined Christian aristocracy of the 8th century Anglo-Saxon court. So the Hrothgar's court is known for the refinement in that particular society. There is also belief in magic symbols, heathen cremation ceremonies, pagan power of fate, existing with faith in God's power over man, in the existence of heaven and hell. So it is deeply religious in the significance of biblical stories, from the sinfulness of Cain to the sacrifice of Christ. At the end of the poem, a complete reconciliation is never achieved. There is a word for fate, wired, W-Y-R-D, is both fate and God's plan for the world. There are influences of Virgil's Aeneid, that is a Latin classic, and his use of certain rhetorical devices of language and structure, contrasts in climax and understatements, all these including boasts and understatements. So, all these seem to reflect the classical epic tradition. Rhetoric, contrasts, structure, understatement, boast. So, all these things are combined together in Beowulf, and there are references, or not references but influences of classics such as Aeneid. The main narrative of the poem is focused and it derives from 3 folk stories in which the historically accurate raids and feuds between Danes, Geats, Swedes, etc. are described. In the first of these episodes, Beowulf, a mighty swimmer and wrestler, frees the mead hall of the Danish king Hrothgar by wrenching out the claw-like arm of the male monster Grendel. In the second, the hero slays Grendel's dam, that is a hideous water hag, and these 2 episodes are closely related. The second brings the poem to a dramatic climax. The third, when Beowulf has aged, is no longer merely fighting for his youthful glory. Now he is a wise and aged king who has ruled the Geats for 50 peaceful and prosperous years. He fights and dies to save his people from a fire-breathing dragon who has been attacking their kingdom. So then the poem ends, or the epic ends, on a mood of elegy, elegiac mood. So it's not just a fairy tale, an adventurous tale. It is also it has deep religious allegories. It is also a very mature and complex work of art, especially for those times. So that is Beowulf. I would urge you to go through it, at least understand. If passages from Beowulf stare at you in your competitive exams, so don't get nervous. Now you know what the story is all about. You know the names, major names and figures and characters. Just go through, give a very quick glance to the poem, and you would understand what you are looking at. Coming to the device, now we were talking about allegory. What is allegory? Allegory derives from the Greek word allegoria. Literally, it means speaking otherwise, saying something but meaning something else. It's a sort of an extended metaphor where characters, actions and scenery are symbolic, referring to spiritual, political, psychological confrontations. There is a surface meaning, there is a deep meaning. John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress, written in 1678, the story of Christian salvation, and it's one of the most important, one of the earliest known examples of an allegory. And of course, now we know George Orwell's 1984 is a political allegory. So, all sorts of allegories. Okay. Salman Rushdie is known for writing allegories. Myths of Orpheus and Eurydice, they are examples of redemption, salvation, quest. So, that is also an allegory. The anonymous work, again Pilgrim's Progress and all these are all, and even earlier than that, morality plays. We will soon do mysteries and moralities plays where there is a character of every man, which is also a deeply allegorical character. Italian writer Dante's his Divine Comedy is also an example of allegory. It is a journey of the individual soul towards God. So, these are the various examples of allegories. One of the most important allegory ever written is Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan. I have already told you, hero is an everyman, he could be any man, Christian. Other characters are Mr. Worldly, Wise Man, Faithful, Hope, Giant, Despair. These are the names of characters. So, very typical characters. The work describes a journey of Christian everyman who flees the city of destruction. Note the name of the city. Passes through the slough of despond, the interpreter's house, the house of beautiful, the valley of humiliation, Vanity Fair. Okay, Vanity Fair is not just the title of Thackeray's novel, but it's a town in John Bunyan's Pilgrim Progress. And he finally arrives at the celestial city. What does all this mean? It's a journey of every man. That's what we have to go through: humiliation, vanity, slough, despair, and then finally, if you are good, if you have retained your goodness, you will be rewarded with the celestial city. So, as an allegory, it represents man's journey through trials of life towards heaven. It is related to a parable or a fable. Hero is a zero, cipher. Okay, the reader is supposed to identify with the hero. Okay, it's a typical plot. Jonathan Swift later on used it in Gulliver's Travels, innocent hero and his journey. Alice in Wonderland, okay, so Lewis Carroll's, so that is also an innocent's quest and travel journey. Kay in Kafka's The Castle. So, all these are, they derive from everyman. All these characters are put through experiences, tests, traps, temptations, etc. Remember, allegory was a popular literary device in the Middle Ages, in the 14th century. Dante's Divine Comedy, the French work Roma de la Rose, and Chaucer's House of Fame, and William Langland's Piers Plowman. These are important allegories. In the 20th century, the stories and novels of Franz Kafka can be considered instances of allegories. Of course, there is a mother of all allegories, Edmund Spenser's Fairy Queen. Look at this slide and look at a reading of Spenser's Fairy Queen, one of the greatest allegories ever written. Is something that is very frequently asked in most competitive exams. Please be prepared with it. From allegory, let us move on to a fable. A fable is a short narrative in prose or verse that exemplifies an abstract moral thesis or principle of human behavior. And then there is a moral at the end in the form of an epigram. For example, we have beast fables in which animals talk and act like the human types they represent. So, Aesop's fables. So, sometimes you may come across this also. Fables in the Western culture, they derive mainly from the stories that were sometimes mistakenly attributed to Aesop. So, was the most well known author of fables. There was also Jean de La Fontaine, a Frenchman, who wrote a a set of very clever fables in verses. Then also remember Chaucer's The Nun's Priest's Tale is the story of the cock and the fox. It's a beast fable. Germane to all this, you have a parable. Parable is a very short narrative about human beings presented, not beasts and animals, so as to stress the analogy of parallel with a general lesson or moral or a thesis that the narrator is trying to put forward. Parable was one of Jesus' favorite devices as a teacher. For example, his parable of the Good Samaritan and of the prodigal son. So, the Bible is an important reading as well for those who are interested in competitive exams. There is something called an exemplum, which is a story told as a particular instance of the general theme in a religious sermon. The device was popular in the Middle Ages when extensive collections of exempla, some historical and legendary, were prepared for use by preachers. For example, later on, again we are in the Middle Ages, so let me talk about Chaucer's The Pardoner's Tale. The pardoner is preaching on the theme that greed is the root of all evil. Greed is not good, okay, as someone tells us in Wall Street, the movie, but that is a digression. Greed is the root of all evil, that is what we have been told traditionally. This incorporates as an exemplum of the tale of the three drunken merrymakers, revelers, who set out to find and defy death and find a heap of gold instead, only to find death after all when they kill one another in the attempt to gain sole possession of the treasure. Okay, so this is an example of exemplum. So thank you very much, and we will soon meet for our next class.